Okay, this here is Tamarack, or eastern larch, which is a species you're really not going to find very many places in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. This might be one of the few places in the Chesapeake Bay watershed where you can find it. I am in Elk County right now, northern Pennsylvania, pretty high elevation in a very wet site. And that is where you're likely to find it, here in kind of the mid-Atlantic. The furthest south I've ever seen one of these species is actually in West Virginia, in a high elevation bog up there. We have a bunch of these isolated bogs that are kind of remnants from glaciation, that are different conditions, that are more northerly kind of conditions than, you know, the rest of the area around them, partly because preserved that way, because they're such high elevation, and because the boggy nature of them inhibits a lot of the other kind of succession from happening, a lot of other species from moving in, so we get these species that kind of aren't really found many other places. So this tree, Tamarack, or eastern larch, will be found all the way up to kind of the boreal, the end of the boreal forests. It won't grow too much further than that, but nothing grows much further than that. No trees. Everything kind of gets scrubby, shrubby, and then eventually, you know, turns into more of a herbaceous landscape. So let's talk about the actual tree rather than just its range. To me, it looks like there's a bunch of different coniferous species, pine species actually, that you'll see with this kind of bark. It's gray, it's very flaky, not incredibly distinct. It gets a little reddish beneath when you peel off some of that older bark. The really distinctive trait to me is the leaves. So they're held in these little tufts, and they're actually deciduous. So this is one of the few coniferous species that are deciduous. No other conifer in our region is going to have these tufts like this of its needles, and the only other conifer in our region that is deciduous is bald cypress. And so that's pretty easy to identify it if you do come across it. The cones are sessile, meaning they're held, you know, affixed to the stem. For the most part, they're kind of pointed up, but sometimes they kind of point diagonal like that. We'll take a look at some newer cones too. As far as utility value, very hard wood that I think is not very porous, so it's used a lot for kind of, you know, more rot resistant, durable stuff, posts, that kind of thing. And I think it's a pulpwood, but it's not really a super valuable timber species because it doesn't get super big, but it is valuable, and it was used like a bunch of our other conifers because of the high tannins in the bark. It was used in the tanning industry at one point in time too, historically important for that reason. To me, so what gave this away to me when I was walking by is those leaves again, and the branches are pretty slender and come pretty horizontally off the tree. But because of these little tufts and because of those slender branches, it kind of looks like bottle brushes to me. And so pretty easy to see. And then here we have these bright green new cones here that will, you know, eventually be fertilized and then turn into those old ones I just showed you. But as far as wildlife value, you know, excellent for cover. Things do browse on it, and, you know, like all of our other conifers, things will eat the seeds. But for the most part, just a cool species to see. Again, it's very rare in our region in the mid-Atlantic. We're kind of at the northern, or the southern terminus. So just really wonderful to see this cool tree that's more of a representative of the boreal forests.